Evidence-based practice: advantages, limitations, and ethical considerations. In the history of psychological practices for treating clients with mental illness, there have been a lot of unethical treatments that were based on things like religion or purely just out of personal opinion or experimentation. Thanks to new technology and more educational awareness, evidence-based practices have been more prevalent in the field of psychology for social work, psychologists, and also counselors. Having evidence-based practices help maintain ethical boundaries and standards for the helping professional. Some examples of evidence-based practices include behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, also known as EMDR, exposure therapy, family therapy, group therapy, and DBT. What are the advantages of using evidence-based practices? Well, one of the main ones is that it is a research-supported intervention for improving clients' mental health. It has better client outcomes and increased accountability, and it is more efficient use of resources. More importantly, using evidence-based practices help maintain personal biases stay their own and they don't influence or conflict with clients. I will also add that evidence-based practices are also influenced by the American Counseling Association Code of Ethics. Examples of advantages include improved client outcomes, reduced risk of harm, greater accountability, client confidence, and tailored treatment. I will provide an example for each of these advantages. Improved client outcomes basically means that someone that comes in for counseling and receives an evidence-based practice is more likely to possibly fall into remission or have some of their symptoms decrease. An example of reduced risk of harm: as stated earlier, the history of psychological treatment for clients has been less than ethical. Having an evidence-based practice ensures clients' safety from personal bias, discrimination, as well as experiments that aren't proven to be effective in treating mental illness. Client confidence. The client can be confident that the professional sitting before them has been trained in evidence-based practices that are backed by research. This then creates a dynamic between the professional and the client that supports the client's own autonomy and also comes up with a treatment plan that is tailored to them and their goals. What is a tailored treatment? A tailored treatment can be anything from decreasing symptoms to decreasing behaviors or even how frequent they come to see their counselor. It is important that a counselor is aware of the treatment plan that the client has so that they can work together in navigating the client's treatment for better success. As stated earlier, the American Counseling Association also supports the use of evidence-based practices because it improves client outcomes, professional credibility, informed decision-making, ethical responsibility, and it also influences continuous learning for the helping professional. I would also like to point out why continuous learning is important. Even though helping professionals get their degree and their license, it is important for a helping professional to keep up to date with certain standards, ethical codes, and any changes to the DSM. While there is a lot of research that supports the use of evidence-based practices, there are some limitations that should be noted. One of the main limitations of evidence-based practice is that it can oversimplify a complex nature of human behavior and also how to treat certain clients. Not everybody is gonna react the same way to receiving an evidence-based practice, and it is important to make ethical considerations such as cultural diversity and a client's background. Another ethical consideration is managed care systems. Evidence-based practices have become more popular with managed care organizations because it is cost effective and because there is a higher outcome of client success. However, this creates an ethical concern for a one-size-fits-all, where it is believed that because this treatment worked for one client, it will work for every client, which is a really big concern considering that not all clients are the same and come from all different walks of life. It is important that counselors are aware of this and are able to meet their clients where they're at and provide any necessary changes to their treatment. For example, let's say you have a client that comes into your office that is seeking treatment from a Christian-based therapist. Most insurances do not cover Christian-based counseling as they see that it is not an evidence-based practice. This becomes a conflict for the client because they have a right over their own autonomy and know what's best for themselves. And if they cannot afford to use a Christian-based therapist, it might even hinder them from seeking treatment. It is important that more change is made so that other practices can be considered evidence-based and more insurances accept other practices rather than just an evidence-based practice that fits every client into one box.
And I don't care if I got much at all here in this small town, 'cause in the end we're all buried deep inside the same hole in the ground.